I hereby call the Palm Springs regular city council meeting of February 29th, 2024 to order. Unfortunately, Kyla couldn't get here in time, so we're going to start the meeting and do the pledge, but we're going to invite Kyla to come back another time and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, could we conduct a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Garner,
Here.
Councilmember Hostich,
Here.
Councilmember Middleton, Mayor Pro Tem DeHart,
Here.
Mayor Bernstein,
Here.
all members present.
Thank you. I wanted to mention a few proclamations that were read in the last couple weeks and are coming up. One is tomorrow is the beginning of Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, proclaiming the month of March to be Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month to increase awareness and offer education on the importance of early detection and screening of colorectal cancer, as colorectal cancer is one of the few cancers that can be prevented with timely screening. We also read a proclamation for Jacques Cousin, who is honored on February 14th, 2024, with the 466th star on the Palm Springs Walk of the Stars, honoring him for his contributions in art and design, including the iconic Modernism Week, which has evolved from a small idea into a world-renowned cultural phenomenon. And we read a proclamation for International Bear Convergence, proclaiming the weekend of February 22nd to 26th as Palm Springs International Bear Convergence 2024 weekend, an event which attracts thousands of visitors from all over the globe and brings great visibility to the city of Palm Springs, for the county of Riverside, and for celebrating March as, let's go on to the next one. And the last one was to the county of Riverside for celebrating March as Riverside County Arts and Culture Month, and to proclaim the month of March as Riverside County Arts and Culture Month, to continue encouraging the arts in our communities and the region, which not only promotes tourism throughout the region, but also enriches the lives of our residents. Please help yourselves to flyers, exploration passes, and pins celebrating the first Riverside County Arts and Culture Month. The items are located by the speaker cards that we all have here. People have asked us to read proclamations at City Council, so we're going to mention them. Instead of reading the full proclamations, I will mention them. Our next item is acceptance of the agenda. The City Council will discuss the order of the agenda, may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, or request consent calendar items be removed for a separate discussion. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Are there any items staff or a council member would like removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion? Councilmember Garner? Oh, Councilmember Middleton, sorry.
Excuse me. Yes, I would like to actually remove item 1Y from the agenda and defer that to an upcoming meeting. That is a significant project in my district, and I'd like to have an opportunity to sit down with staff and map out a very thorough opportunity for the businesses and the residents in that area to be fully informed as to what it is that we are proposing to do, and have an opportunity to respond to it. And I am well aware that this has been on our agenda for years at this point, but there's still an awful lot of people who don't know about it.
The council can do that as part of this motion if it wishes.
Okay. Yeah.
Second item is when we adjourn this evening, I would like to ask that we adjourn in honor of the memory of Nex Benedict, who was brutally murdered in the Tulsa suburbs due to her status as a non-binary person.
Thank you. Any others?
Do you have one?
Councilmember Hostich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to pull, but maybe if staff could just summarize the funding and allocations that we're making tonight. So we have item 1J for the 4 capital improvement projects for Measure J funds for the airport. We also have art funding in item 1CC. So I hate to go over those without flagging them for the public. There's also item that you spoke about, which is the what number is that? F, accept a grant award from the California Public Utilities Commission in the amount of $51,000. So that's also an exciting investment that we're making into our community center. So perhaps instead of just pulling those, we could have staff just summarize them for the public. Thank you.
Okay, and I am going to pull item 1X. And I am going to recuse myself from 1V as I have a business in the vicinity and I want to do further research to determine if I can weigh in. Is that it? Yep, Councilmember DeHart. Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to ask that we adjourn today in memory of our educator, coach, Palm Springs High School, Andy Hollinger.
Okay, so noted. Okay, so I'd now like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Oh, we did that already, sorry. Put my screen up.
I hit the wrong button.
The record, Mayor Pro Tem voted yes. Okay. At this time, I invite City Attorney Jeff Ballinger to provide a report on the closed session.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, members of the public, the City Council met in closed session to discuss the 3 items that are listed on the agenda, and there was no reportable action.
Okay, the next item is public testimony. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on non-public hearing agenda items only. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. You're asked to please begin your time by telling us what agenda item or items you are speaking about. Please note that the testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the public hearing, and general public comment for subjects not on the agenda will be taken later in the evening. If there is written comment that you wish to distribute to the City Council members, please hand it to the City Clerk. The first speaker is Stephen Viatic, followed by Kevin Spring.
Good evening, council and staff. Stephen Viatic, Reefer Madness, commenting on item 3A. I sent council a detailed breakdown of gross receipt calculations demonstrating how the total taxes increased on January 1st, 2023, directly because of Assembly Bill 195. For year 2023, I approximated a $92,000 total tax increase for the average cannabis retailer. The staff report on the agenda tonight proposes a 1-month retro action. However, since this problem started 14 months ago, I would like to respectfully request more than 1 month. Berkeley, California is a good example for comparison. Berkeley had a 2.5% cannabis tax, and they suspended it until July 2025. They also retroacted it back to January 2023, which is when the tax problem began. I would also like to point out that although the staff report proposes retroaction to last month is already paid since the full 10% was due at 5 p.m. today. Can we please get clarification on how that will be credited? Cannabis tax law is not simple, so I understand that this process takes time. I would also like to point out 2 consensus items from the last meeting that were omitted from the staff report. One is the credit and debit card fee exclusion from gross receipts. The other is for allowing operators to hire new employees while they have pending live scans. Lastly, I would like to thank the council and thank staff for their hard work in putting all this together and also for allocating 1% to social good. That 1% will go a long way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kevin Spring, followed by Steve Burton.
Hello, City Council. Nice to see you again. My name's Kevin. I'm with a local cannabis distributor here in Palm Springs, and so happy to be here. I am actually speaking in regards to 3A, that 10% down, reduced to 5% tax that you're proposing. In fact, it was proposed almost a year ago. The intent to go retroactive on the payback has good meaning, good intention, but that's kind of a difficult thing to do. I think I have a fun proposal, something that will be a good resolution to that. In that year where we were at 10%, our neighboring cities were at 5%. And undoubtedly, we lost customers to those neighboring cities. I think it's important that we come back strong. And as the news often picks up these meetings, they love to announce on exciting things that we do. So announcing this reduction of half the city tax on cannabis will be something to announce. But with that intent in mind to go retroactive and give back bits of money to the business owner, I propose a honeymoon period of 0% city tax for maybe 6 months or 2024. That kind of announcement on the news would be more simple than a retroactive payment back to the business owner, but it would also help every operator in the city. It would really announce, hey, come to Palm Springs, see what we've done. And again, 0% city tax on cannabis will be something that I think every news outlet would pick up, every newspaper, every bit of media would, and it would be very supportive of the operators here. Again, there was intent to make good on that this took so long to go from 10% down to 5%, and the intent is good. I think we come back strong with a honeymoon period of no city tax for 6 months or the year of 2024. Thank you.
Next speaker is Steve Burton, followed by Darrell Terrell.
I'm here to speak on 1M. Mayor Bernstein, council members, my name is Steve Burton. I'm president of Ace Parking. I've been managing operations for the city of Palm Springs for 15 years. I've managed the current enforcement on the streets. Today's the 10th anniversary. I'm here to speak about the process and the fact that you're awarding it to one of my competitors, which I don't have a problem with, but they're $40,000 a year more than we are, and on a 5-year contract, that's about $200,000. I lost the airport contract a couple of years ago, over $10,000 a year in difference between myself and the incumbent, or we were the incumbent. But anyway, we just asked that council maybe not approve this item today and go back and take a look at the scores. None of us have seen them, but we were told it was all very close and $200,000 differential. I don't see why I should be laying off 6 and 7-year tenured employees on a contract for the city. So I'd appreciate your reconsideration or asking staff to at least review the way it was decided on. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Darrell Terrell, followed by Ignazio Battaglia.
My name is Darrell Terrell. I'm speaking on 1F. I'm not speaking as a planning commission of the city of Moreno Valley, but as for myself. I'm here, as we all know, during the pandemic, it showed the inequality that exists. And one of those was the digital divide. And computers and smart devices have become vital to almost every part of our daily lives. And I can remember door knocking for Councilmember Garner, and I recall the different neighborhoods that I came in contact. My eyes were wide open. I just couldn't believe all the disparity that I've seen in the district that I was knocking on, and people were losing hope. But what I saw, there was also a lot of communities that were left behind. And this grant gives people a reason to hope, because a lot of times during the pandemic, a lot of people didn't have access to internet services, and they were left out. So if they have children, they couldn't hook up to the internet to do lessons. and people. And so I'm glad you guys you work hard to give people a reason to hope, and all of you. And I appreciate what you guys have done, and also for you, Council Member Garner, for standing up for the people in your district, because you're fresh air for a lot of people that they have the access to the resources that the city have and giving the fair share. And all of you on the same thing too, council members and Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your guys, what you're doing and bringing resources to the community. This is an awesome thing. It's a symbol of hope. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ignacio Battaglia, followed by Jesse Burstein. Ignacio Battaglia here? No? Okay, we'll go then to Jesse Burstein.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Temp, council members, and city staff. My name is Jesse Burstein, and I'm here on behalf of Sana Botanica, a cannabis nursery in North Palm Springs. As you may remember from our previous meeting, there was a consensus among the council to change the methodology by which cannabis nurseries are taxed within the city to be more in line with the state as well as other cities and general logic to cultivation. As you probably are aware, the city attorney, after reviewing that proposal, has determined that it must go before the voters instead of being amended by the council. As an alternative, I'd like to propose that the nurseries be carved out as a separate category under the gross receipts tax with a separate rate of 2% being set specifically for nursery sales. That will equate to roughly the same approximate amount as the cultivation tax would have been under the alternative methodology. This is a change that I believe the council is permitted to make, and I would appreciate that consideration. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. City Clerk, is there any other public comment?
Yeah. I have no public commenters here. I think he's a non-agenda item, so we
Non-agenda.
have no more speakers unless we have some online.
Okay, then, and the person, Ignacio, is not here. Okay. The next item is consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar without item 1Y, which is removed to a later date, and 1X, which was removed for separate discussion, and then we have several later that will have some comments.
The roundabout, the bracket code,
Yes,
X.
yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I can pull item 1M, we received public comment about it. I'd like to
Okay, we will
remove it now.
voting on the consent calendar. 1Y is removed to a later date, 1X, which I removed, and 1M.
We have a first, I need a second.
The seconding button is not working.
Okay.
Okay, well, I will second. Okay, so we will now do some comments. I know staff was asked to comment on some of the funding. City Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Council Member Holstage mentioned item 1J, and I think item 1, was it 1F?
1CC, 1F.
So I'd like to just, I know 1J is our airport capital projects. I thought I'd have our aviation director, Harry Barrett, just come up and give a very brief summary, I think is what you're looking for, not a full report.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Item 1J is to approve 4 Measure J projects that both the Airport Commission and the Measure J Commission approved. And those are 4 shade structures in front of the, or near the TNC pickup area for Uber and Lyft, carpet replacement, benches, and water filling stations throughout the airport. The airport's collected $1.5 million in taxes. Those are assessed against aviation fuels. They can only be used on the airport, and we're applying those to those 4 projects with your approval. Are there any questions for me?
City Manager, did you want to comment, Councilmember? You want to mention the other funding ones,
No,
1CC and 1F?
That's right, and obviously, these are tremendous projects that really demonstrate the importance of Measure J and how it's making a difference in our community. So we appreciate the opportunity to highlight those and spotlight those. The second item that we had was item 1CC, I think it was, and that is the
Jay Verada is available to speak on the arts item.
Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Jay Verada, Director of Housing and Community Development. Item 1CC is funded with public arts funds. Public art funds are obtained by assessing a 0.5% fee on development projects in the city. And those fees go into the Public Arts Fund as part of the permit fee payments that developers make towards the city. In this particular account, we currently have $266,000 remaining in the fiscal year, which would be utilized for the allocation, the requested allocation of $100,000 for these art projects in parks.
Councilmember Halstage? No?
Thank you. I just wanted to identify to the public that we're investing these resources into our community. So exciting to see all the airport improvements like the shade structure and more. And yeah, thank you to Jay. Just wanted to flag that we're approving these expenditures for public art at James O. Jesse, Victoria Park, and more. So thank you for that. We also have item 1F, which is accepting a grant award from the California Public Utilities Commission in the amount of $51,000. Hello, thank you.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you very much for pulling this. We've actually been working with Townsend, our grant provider, for a couple of years, and this is the next in a string of grants. We've started improving our library by improving the core networking. We have already completed a grant with the library for improving the public internet terminals there, and this is the next step, and this is going to expand out to recreation. We're going to add 10 terminals at Demuth for public internet access. It's free to the public to come and access, and we've actually just applied at James O. Jesse for the next round. This is a rolling grant, so we expect to just keep going with them.
Fantastic work. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I also wanted just to mention a couple other things that we've hired G4 Architecture, who is going to be doing more extensive work on community and stakeholder input for the library renovation. And also 1T, which is approving $9 million for street paving out of Measure J, which is actually more than we originally thought Measure J would be per year. It's the highest amount we've ever spent on street paving in the city. And that, and the $1.5 million for the airport renovations, we have over $10 million in Measure J funds that we are approving today, the bulk of which funds come from tourist dollars. So, and these are direct improvements to our city. So, I wanted to mention that. And now we'll move on to 1M, which was pulled.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Patrick Clifford with the Department of Special Program Compliance. Before you is the staff report for the item 1M, and it's with respect to approval of a contract services agreement with LAZ Parking. In the fall of 2022, we worked with our procurement department to do an start the RFP process for our parking enforcement services for our downtown parking program. 3 members of our city staff was part of the procurement process. 1 member was from our special program compliance department, 1 member was from the police department, and 1 member was from our sustainability department. They met, evaluated the firms. We had 3 firms submit proposals to the city. One was Ace Parking, who is our current contractor performing the services in Palm Springs. Our second one was Conair Technology Services, and the third respondent was LAZ Parking. And after review of the material submitted, it was found by our procurement assessment that LAZ Parking did score the highest out of the 3 submittals, and inevitably we have moved to provide this contract for approval this evening. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Holsters?
Thank you. Heard public comment tonight from one of the applicants or proposals. So could you just respond to that? The staff report, I know we have a very complicated procurement process for state and city law that we need to follow. The staff report is very short on details of what the scoring looked like, how close it was, any of the details related to scoring. And so obviously we have someone here tonight who has questions about that. So if you could provide more detail as allowed, please.
Yeah, we do have Kim with our procurement department here that can give a little bit more insight on the procedure as far as RFP, and may be able to provide a little bit more detail about what that entails. Things.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So he's correct in basically his statements about the scoring. There were 3 firms. 1 firm failed the minimum requirements. There are some minimum requirements laid out that they have to meet, and so that left 2 firms in the running for the scores. They were really neck and neck in the first phase of the scoring, which was looking at their technical proposal to see if they were qualified to do the work. And then it went into the interview phase, and during the interview phase, that's where the company LAZ that we're recommending to award the contract to pulled ahead in the scoring. So when we added all the points together, which is how our process works, the proposal scores, and we look at their cost, and we look at their interview scores, there was about a 3-point difference in the scoring between the 2 firms because they are qualified, obviously, to do the work. But LAZ did score the highest by the evaluation panel.
Can I ask you a question? 3 points out of how many?
100. Well, actually, sorry, there's 125 possible. There's 100 for the proposal and 25 for the interview. So there's a total of 125 points available. And the highest scoring firm had a score of 116, and Ace Parking was at 113 in the evaluation.
Even though there were $40,000 a year less?
So the cost points are taken into consideration. There is a formula that's used for the cost. The lowest cost proposer receives all 20 available points for price, and the firms are then prorated against that lowest price. So for example, if you are 10% higher in cost, which is the case here, then the price points go down by 10% or 2. So you get a score of 18 for having that score. And again, this is a best value method. We did an RFP, request for proposal, and that is a best value. So it combines both the firm's capabilities to perform the work and the price into the equation. It's not a low bid process.
I just have a question. The staff analysis says LAZ Parking is a Palm Springs-based business. The disclosure forms on page 30 say that they're based in Hartford, Connecticut, and Costa Mesa. So I just want to clarify, because I know we award potentially additional points, or we have a local preference policy. So are they a Palm Springs based business?
They are operating in Palm Springs as a business, and they do have a business license in the city of Palm Springs.
Thank you. And then does our process for the RFP or procurement have analysis for an existing vendor or existing jobs? We heard public comment about retaining jobs that have been longer term in this city. Do we have a process to consider that? I saw that they had a 5-year term and then 1-year renewals, and then obviously it's open for, this process. But do we consider who we've done business with in the past and then impact to jobs?
It factors into the evaluation criteria, and then we do, as you mentioned, use a local preference. We do have a local preference ordinance, and it is up to the firm to declare or ask for that local preference as part of the process. There's a form that we have that they check a box, and they include their business license to prove that they are a local business, and that does give them some additional points. There are 5 possible points for that. And you're right on this. So what happens a lot of times is the firms will list their location in Palm Springs as their business location on their bid form, and that's why you see that on the staff report like that. We usually try to catch that when we get the business disclosure form, because a lot of times they're headquartered in one location, but they may have branch offices or local business operations in the city.
Thank you. So did they receive local preference points in this case?
They did.
Okay, thank you.
But the current operator would have a local business license, right?
The current business operator did not request the local preference in the bid.
But they do have a local business license in order to operate here.
They do have a local business license, they do, but when he didn't check the box requesting the local preference, my procurement officer called him and asked him why he didn't check the box for clarification, because there was a business license in there. And he said because his business was located in San Diego. He did not ask for it.
Did the applicant understand the local preference policy at this time, that because they have a business license and we knew they had a business license?
That'd probably be a question for that person. The solicitation is clear on that process and how that works. It outlines for them what they need to do. It's discussed in the pre-proposal conference, or the pre-bid conference, pre-proposal conference in this case, and it's outlined in the solicitation, and it's outlined in the ordinance.
I don't know what our options, but this seems quite odd that we know the operator is a local, they've been here since 2008,
Right, so that's why we contacted them.
Councilmember Middleton.
I think we should, excuse me, I think we should proceed with some caution here. We've got a competitive process. We've got staff that has gone through that process and actually reached out and made a phone call. If we as council were to substitute our judgment for the process, and I'll defer to the city attorney, we expose the city to a potential lawsuit from the other competitors. So I'm not arguing one way or another other than to proceed very cautiously with what we're doing.
I will say this, the bid documents do say that in order to qualify for the local bid preference, the bidder needs to check the box, and that box was not checked. In addition, the city's ordinance says in order for a local business to be eligible to claim the preference, the business must request the preference in the solicitation response and provide a copy of its current business license from a jurisdiction within the Coachella Valley. If the council is not completely satisfied with this process, one option the council has is to restart the process. I don't know from a timing perspective whether that presents any issues, but that certainly is one option. The other option is simply to proceed on staff recommendation.
So my problem is I'm trying to understand, and I'm not trying to question the process so I'm not asking for you to redo this. What I would suggest, because I know that you are doing a local affair coming up, you're doing a valley-wide one. and one of the things is to sort of emphasize the local preference and the importance of making sure you know what that means as this process.
Absolutely.
And that's what we can do going forward. I mean, if you made the point now, it's hard to. Councilmember?
Thank you. I agree. I'm asking questions to understand our local preference because we've discussed it as a policy priority for city council. And so I am trying to suss out what is defined as a local business and where their place of business is. And so that's helpful. So thank you, Mayor, for lifting that up.
And we are doing some cleanup on the procurement policies, and I know that, Mayor, you'd mentioned maybe looking at the local preference ordinance, because it does have some wording in it that's a little bit confusing. It says something like physically operating a business in Palm Springs, so it's not really telling you whether does that mean that's where your corporate office and your headquarters are, or are you just actually setting up a Kool-Aid stand on the sidewalk outside and that's your place of business? So we probably need to define that term a little better about what we're talking about when we say operate a business. And it's just some language that's in our ordinance that's carried over into our procurement policies that is a little bit gray, and we should probably fix that as part of this process.
We're all in agreement on that, and so I appreciate that. So thank you. I appreciate all the work. I know these are not easy, so thank you for everything.
Yes.
And what day is the fair again?
It's on April 17th from 9 a.m. to noon at the Convention Center. So all local businesses, please join us. So
And that's a valley-wide.
It is a Coachella Valley-wide, and I have new public agencies wanting to join us every day. I think I'm up to 10 now, and we're probably going to have even more next year because so many people are interested in it.
Thank you. Sorry to add that in, but it's appropriate this time. Mayor Pro Tem?
So now I have I raise a question. If we know the process may be at fault, or we need more definition and clarification, and if there was only 3 points separating the bid, it seems like if there was greater clarification in the process, that the second bidder may have paid more attention to that.
Actually, I'm not sure if it would have made a difference because it actually, when I was saying it says physically operate, it was actually looser than I think that, so.
The applicant was told and called and did not do it, apparently.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next one we have pulled was 1X. I would like a brief staff report, just particularly in my district, the Racket Club and the road diet, both in Racket Club and throughout in Little Tuscany, has been a big issue for a long time. And so I'm very happy this is moving forward, and that's one reason I wanted to highlight it, and I have a few questions.
Sure, I'll be as brief as possible. I did prepare some history just so that everyone's aware of why this came forward. And as we spoke about Measure J early on.
Joel, you might mention your name and title so people know who you are.
I did jump, sorry. So, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Joel Montalvo. I'm the city engineer here in Palm Springs. Thank you, Scott, for helping me out there. I was too eager to start talking there. So what I really wanted to start with is we've highlighted Measure J, and the pedestrian master plan is something that Measure J is going to help fund. That's projects all over the city that is going to work on safety, and that's sort of what I wanted to start with. This project, back in December of 21, the city of Palm Springs completed the pedestrian master plan. The plan identified 37 locations. Those locations consisted of street segments and intersections that the city should look at, further evaluate to see if we could do improvements for pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, and any other safety that we can do. The plan identified 37 distinct locations for safety mitigation measures. Within the 37 locations, 75 individual action items required attention according to the plan. For example, and why the 75 versus the 37? For example, an intersection can have up to 4 locations, so each intersection, each corner has a distinct different situation that could be looked at and mitigated. So to date, staff has closed out 44 of those action items. We incorporated them into other projects. They were part of other capital projects. They've been part of like traffic calming projects. We've worked with streets to do that, the police department, and we've also other projects that have addressed those 37 locations include the CV Link and the CV Sync. So those projects also helped with the 37 mitigation locations for the pedestrian master plan. As part of that plan, there are 2 major projects that were identified to work so that the city could look at and evaluate. So that was the South Palm Canyon Drive and Racket Club lane reconfigurations. The focus of both of those projects will be pedestrian, bicyclist, and vehicle safety through lane reconfiguration, bike lanes, crossing, sidewalk, gap closures where feasible. The scope of the work for our consultants will consist of data collection, community outreach, conceptual plans, preliminary design, final design for both of the projects. The item before you today will approve 2 separate task orders for our on-call traffic engineer, Kimberly Horn. The 2 proposals were evaluated. We have 2 on-call consultants, and we use them very regularly. We have one on a bigger project. The project that was pulled today is the roundabout. The other firm is working on that. So we use these firms regularly, and we think Kimberly Horn was going to provide the best value for this project. So with that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer questions. We also have Maya from Kimberly Horn online. She can get into any technical questions that might come up. But for now, this is to just start the process.
Okay, and I appreciate it. I'm thrilled this is moving forward, and hopefully it'll save you a lot of time. I know you've heard from a lot of the residents and me often on this. I have a couple comments. One is it looks like there only looks like Class 2 bike lanes. I know Councilmember Middleton has often talked about fully separated bike lanes, and I would like to make sure that's at least a consideration in the process, especially on Racket Club, which is quite a busy road. So that was one comment. We also mentioned the Little Tuscany portion is optional, and I would like to be sure that is included, since that has also taken up a lot of time.
Right, I can confirm that is included. We set it as an optional task just in case we could resolve certain things and we didn't have to include it, but the intent is to fully utilize Kimberly Horn's expertise to help us analyze that particular area and include it in the overall project.
Okay, and lastly, the way the proposal reads, it says up to 4 public meetings for the Racket Club and up to 3 public meetings for Little Tuscany. I would like to make sure that we probably have at least a minimum, if not 4 and 3.
Right, we can make it pretty clear that we have to budget for something, right? We start with 4. Typically, when we find a lot of public engagement, we actually increase the meetings. So those 4, we can consider them as minimum, and minimum 3 for the other one.
Okay,
so we can make that happen.
Because up to 4 could be 0. So
that's true.
That was my concern.
That's true.
Okay, and those were my main comments on it, but I'm glad we're moving forward with this, and I will relay this to the community. So, Mayor Pro Tem?
Hey, Joel, thank you for this. Incredibly important project, and I appreciate you keeping it top on the list from the CIP. Now, I understand that this is a process that's going to help define what type of bike lanes that are going to be best incorporated along both of these routes, and we're also going to be addressing what happens to that pedestrian and bike traffic when these routes terminate. Is that part of this process with the Horn Group?
Kimberly Horn will look at all combined, all options, right? What kind of bike lanes are more appropriate in certain locations, which ones aren't. And if I'm understanding the question, you really want to find out from the design consultant what happens at the very terminus of each one of these bike lanes, correct?
Yeah.
Or each one of these projects. And the design team can inform us of that. as the process evolves, we can come up with solutions. If we feel that it's going to be a terminate somewhere, a dead end, if you will, we can look at other options, maybe turn it and route it somewhere else. So yeah, everything is going to be on the table. It's going to be a long process, maybe 7-8 months with a lot of public engagement. And we're hoping to draw out the public so that we can get input and provide an adequate plan. That
Yeah, no, I think
satisfies.
that's excellent. So when will you come back to council to share what the findings are and what that game plan is going to be?
So once we go through our 4 community meetings and we come up with, we go from the public input to concept plans. When we get a concept going, maybe we have 2 or 3 types of solutions to the problems, if you will. We can come back to council and present before ever going to final design.
Excellent, thank you.
And also just to clarify, Kimley Horn says they'll have 6 city meetings in that process as well, or up to 6?
Yeah. So if it's in their proposal, that's what we will hold them to. And again, I find that some of these public engagements get we would have to add more meetings just to accommodate.
That means this says 6 meetings with staff, is what they're saying.
Yeah, and I think they have to put certain amounts just to budget for them, right? We're in regular contact with Kimberly Horn. They're working on our traffic control center. We meet with them regularly. She's online right now. We engage with them regularly. I don't think they really defined. They have to define it for purposes of billing and budgeting, but we meet with them regularly.
Okay, so you'll be updated throughout the way. And I think what Mayor Pro Tem was also referring to, especially where Racket Club turns into Farrell and hits Vistacino, was one of the terminuses, which is if you have a bike lane terminating on Vistacino, you got to have a plan. I think that's what you mentioned. Okay. Thank you very much, Joel. I appreciate this.
Sure.
Your motion to approve? For the record, it passes 5-0.
So noted.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is item 2A. It's a public hearing for council call-up of an application by Cadence Group LLC comprised of a development permit, a variance, and conditional use permit for a proposed drive-through coffee shop on a .46 acre lot located at 2466 North Palm Canyon Drive, APN 504-250-031, Zone PD 113, General Plan Mixed Use, Cases DP 2023-0018, CUP 2023-0020, VAR 2023-0007, and AR 2023-0083. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council members. So this is a project that was before you about a month ago. And you gave staff and the applicant direction of 90 days to work together to improve the project and to also reach out to the community to further understand their concerns and interests in the project. So that work has occurred, and the applicant has done revisions to the project, which we'll share with you tonight. So the project that we're talking about, again, is at the corner of North Palm Canyon Drive and Racket Club Road. That's presently a vacant site and part of a former shopping center. The site is right there at that intersection that you can see on the graphics that I'm pointing to right now, and it's adjacent to an existing fast food restaurant, Del Taco. The previous proposal that you saw in December was for a drive-through only project. And this is the rendering that shows that previous scheme and the site plan. And if I can just point out briefly, if this thing will point for me. Well, I'm going to show you on the next, let's see. There we go. So there's where the building was located. This was their parking lot. And the drive-through began here at the north, wrapped around here, and discharged here. The drive-through for the adjacent Del Taco runs in this direction and discharges, and there was a concern about traffic conflicts right there. So these were the concerns that the community and yourselves expressed. There was no pedestrian or community-oriented service point. It was drive-through only. It was felt that it lacked a friendly community vibe. The project should be cohesive with the city's sustainability goals. It lacked bicycle parking, and you were interested in better pedestrian access. It was also noted that it does not provide any indoor seating for gathering of the community, and it was felt that the building turned its back to the corner. In other words, building orientation was a concern. And the council expressed the preference that these kinds of developments create more unique spaces in architecture. So the applicant has worked with staff in the community and come up with a revised proposal. They've revised the building orientation and pushed it further north on their parcel so it aligns along the frontage of Racket Club. They've reversed the direction of the queuing through the drive-through lane while still retaining 15 vehicle spaces in that drive-through queue. They've revised the building architecture. They've added the addition of a walk-up window, a public restroom, and a covered outdoor patio. They also added a community gathering space at the corner of the parcel. They've done extensive landscaping with shade trees throughout, not only around the parking as required by our parking code, but also around the entire perimeter of the property. They have increased the amount of parking. It is for 9 vehicles now. However, there still is no indoor dining room. So here you see a comparison of the two, and I want to just very briefly again point out that the building location was there. Now it's there. The orientation of this drive-through, which used to come around this way, now starts here and runs in that direction and brings the two discharges from both Del Taco and this proposed use into the same basic flow. There's still a need for stormwater retention, which is on the lower part of the site. And as I say, the parking lot has been slightly increased, as you can see here. And then there still is extensive amounts of landscaping. And right there in the corner is this community gathering space, which they have put in. So this is an image or a rendering of what that community gathering space might look like, with some chairs or benches, paved areas where the community can come together and meet and chat and so on. This is an important corner and an important intersection, not just this lot, but this area. It's called a primary node in the general plan. And the general plan speaks to these things, saying they should be visually unique and attractive. They should provide some sense of arrival. They should be a hub of social and commercial activity, providing goods, services, activities, and possible events. They should have a specialized architectural treatment, pedestrian amenities, such as drinking fountains, shade, and seating. So it is more than simply, I think, a question of how do you fill out the corner. It's really understanding the vision for this particular intersection within the greater vision of the city's general plan. These are some indications or renderings three-dimensionally of the previous design and the proposed design. And what I want to point out to you here is this is where the pickup window is for the vehicles. And what they've done is they've added, that still is there as you can see, but they've added this covered canopy, and right there underneath that canopy is a pickup window for pedestrians. On the other sides of the building, it's a little bit less clear because these are not the same side of the building. But if you understand that that right there is that overhang by the vehicular drive-through, there was obviously no pedestrian pickup window at that time. Now that pedestrian pickup window happens here. This becomes the Racket Club Road frontage, and this tower element is happening toward the west end of the building. So this is a perspective of the proposed redesign of the project. We're looking at the project as if we were on Racket Club Road going west. So that little folded plate roof element you see there has been added. The pedestrian pickup window happens right there, and the drive-through lanes happen over in this area. You'll also note on your site plans in your packet, they have added sidewalks to get you across these various areas of queuing lanes and parking lots. And there's also a pedestrian access point from the public sidewalk along Racket Club Road right here. The area, if you were to go here and pick up a pedestrian pickup order, you'd pick it up here. You'd either sit here and enjoy it, you could take it with you, and you could also walk along this public sidewalk over to that public gathering place that you saw in the corner. So the council's decision, you're setting aside the Planning Commission and Architectural Review Committee's decisions, and you're making your own decisions tonight based on your analysis of this revised plan. The 4 project parts are the development permit, analyzing the site plan, the conditional use permit for the drive-through use, the variance, for a building that is less than 2,000 square feet, and then the architectural design and landscaping. Normally, we put our review and recommended findings in your staff report. To keep the staff report concise, we put those proposed findings that staff has offered for you in the resolution. So you can find them all there for each one of those permit types. You may adopt those findings as your own, or you may make your own findings in any decision you'd like to make. This is a public hearing, and the applicant is in the audience and would like to speak, and we are available at a staff level here to answer any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, are there questions for staff? None? No?
So
Mayor
did
Pro Tem?
we get any feedback from sustainability on these changes?
I have not personally had a chance to reach out to sustainability. Sustainability was concerned about the drive-through nature of it. We pointed out that they've added the pedestrian walk-up, they've added bike lanes, they've added the sidewalks to make it more pedestrian-friendly, and we have a substantially larger number of trees and landscaping put on this site than what our codes normally allow. And I think that's an important sustainability factor to consider as well, because the trees really do contribute to the environmental improvement in this particular area.
And any new feedback from the residents, the neighborhood groups, Racket Club or Desert Highlands, that opposed the project?
Yes, the applicant did do outreach, which is mentioned in your staff report. There are a couple of letters in your packets also, and I believe one was also forwarded to you this afternoon from one of the other nearby neighborhood groups that have expressed a positive response to these revisions.
Thank you.
Just, you mentioned sustainability. Did the was that the department and the commission, or just the department you're referring to? Did the commission talk about this?
I have not spoken with either the department or the commission.
Okay.
The Sustainability Commission didn't review these revisions, and we don't really have a process for the Sustainability Commission to review planning applications. I do know from speaking to the Director of Sustainability that she's been in contact with a few of them, and I think, as Ken described, their concern was a larger, more global conversation around drive-throughs. I think if that's a conversation we want to have, there's a few different ways to do that. As we said last time, the zoning code right now is permissive for drive-throughs. So we have findings in the zoning code that are permissive for drive-throughs. We are embarking on our our comprehensive zoning update, and I think that's probably the vehicle by which we should have that conversation and think
just
about.
For the record, your name and title.
I'm Chris Hadwin. I'm the Director of Planning, and this is Ken Lyons, Principal Planner.
Thank you. On the outdoor seating, how many people fit in the outdoor seating?
20.
20, okay. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. The public is invited to speak on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes. However, we do have the applicant, and we normally allow 5 minutes to speak. Mr. Cayman Wong.
Evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and staff. My name is Cayman Wong. I'm with the Cadence Group. It's nice to see you all again. Happy Leap Day. As you guys can see, we've been really busy over the last month or so, working with staff. Thanks to their great guidance, Ken and Chris have given us some good guidance as to how to meet some of your directives that you've given us
last year. We've heard, obviously, the main point from the council was about gathering spots. So as you've seen, we've added the park area. We've added direct pedestrian access, so you can kind of see that they don't have to cross anything in terms of drive aisles or access points to get to the pickup window and make an order, or the patio. The patio is much larger now. It's actually the largest patio that we do have here in Palm Springs now, and it is approximately 20 seats. It can be moved around. The elevations have been enhanced, and as you heard, landscaping as well. In terms of sustainability, Starbucks does like to put solar on their buildings. This is a little bit of a smaller building, but if it is able to take on that solar and the solar panels, they will do that, which would help. You've also heard that we've been meeting with 2 neighborhood groups to explain the changes and walk them through that and try to address all of their concerns and listen to them as well and help address some of them, of their concerns. And that was the Desert Highlands Gateway Estate Neighborhood Association and the Mountain Gate Community. And they both have expressed their support for the revisions and the project in general, so we're very happy about that. We very much want to be a positive contributor to the community, and we want to be a part of the solution here on this corner as part of this redevelopment of this corner. So we believe that what we've shown and developed here is a great start to that regentrification of this corner, and we hope you agree. And hopefully more will follow after a new development like this. So I'm here to answer any additional questions if you have any, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item?
I think you should have a card.
That's not for this item. Okay. All right, the public hearing. Oh, are you speaking on this item? Oh, sure.
Right, did you fill out a card? Okay, no problem. What's your name?
You can speak.
He didn't fill out a card.
Okay.
Thank you.
You state your name, please.
My name is Wayne Gottlieb, resident of Palm Springs for 40 years. I love the project that they're proposing. The only concern that I will have is with the shade areas. I have a problem with the homeless in the area across the street that hang out at the 7-Eleven. And this, I could see a situation that's going to cause need for police activity. And I think there has to be something put in place that they will help to control the homeless and the people hanging out there, that our police force doesn't have to put a lot of effort in there. So I think that needs to be addressed so that we don't have homeless sitting there. It's a major intersection coming into our beautiful city, and I would like that addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public speakers?
No further speakers.
Okay. Public hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion or additional questions from the council? Councilmember Garner.
I just have a question for the applicant. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Sorry. You mentioned Mountain Gate. We have an email from an individual within Mountain Gate. But we don't have any information about whether or not you met with the Mountain Gate neighborhood organization or the HOA. Can you just clarify what you said by that?
Yeah, we did meet with them, and we met with that individual that you have that email with, and we gave that presentation to them.
To which group?
It was to the Mountain Gate Community Association.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted the clarification. Appreciate that.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem DeHart.
It's on the border, kind of. My sustainability issues still remain. I do really appreciate the changes that have been made. I think it's really positive. But through our sustainability commission, our sustainability work, the main thing that they've said to us over and over again is in order to meet our goals, we need to reduce traffic. And just supporting drive-through projects in general isn't supporting the sustainability goals that we have for the city. And one of the things that we discussed at our strategic planning was making sure that sustainability was a focus in all of the projects that we're doing. We have been making steps towards things like this and reducing emissions via traffic, but we sometimes fall short. And so I would really like to see us actually really focus on how do we reduce traffic in this city, the amount of cars that are on the road on a regular basis. And the other concern that I have as well is supporting a mainly drive-through project in this area where it gets really congested after long weekends is going to add to that. But then on top of that, if we don't get as much pedestrian traffic because it is all drive-through, then what is the point as well? Because then it becomes a drive-through project anyway, even though we're trying to make it something that's pedestrian friendly as well. So there's the intent, but then there's the reality and the impact regardless of which we choose if we go along with the project.
Member Middleton. Oh,
Thank you. I'm very supportive of efforts to try to reduce traffic in the city, but I think we should approach that from a planning process in terms of what kind of steps can we take. And I'm reluctant to see us take and on a project-by-project basis reject a project simply because it does facilitate automobile traffic. I think we all recognize that there is a significant amount of automobile traffic at that intersection, along with many, many other intersections, and it behooves us to be friendly to the individuals who are in those automobiles and seeking this kind of amenity.
Mayor Pro Tem DeHart?
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the comments that we've gotten so far. And I appreciate the developer coming to the table and making the changes that really do enhance this project visually. I still am of the opinion that it's a great idea, it's a great concept for the city of Palm Springs, just needs to be in another location. I see this is a main entry point for the city, and we're driving in to see this corner, and it is not a corner like no place else. It is a corner like every city USA. And I think if we were able to have this in another part of the city, that would be wonderful. And Starbucks is a good community player, supportive, and that makes a difference. But I just think it's in the wrong position, the wrong location for the city, and sends the wrong message to people as they're driving into the city of Palm Springs.
Thank you. Well, I do agree with the sustainability issue, and I think, sometimes we do have to deal with it, each one, because if we keep letting ones pass that do not address the issue of reducing emissions, we are going to be in a situation where suddenly everyone has gone through because it's a little bit better than what could have been. And we know that this is a serious issue. We're also looking at, we're having a zoning code update, and, we do need to look at more seriously how we are treating drive-throughs. We have a lot in the city, and, other cities have looked at how that really affects long-term planning. This is an area that is in real need of development, but there is a real potential. this is our highest density, I believe, area for building new housing within the city, in the Racket Club area. In fact, right adjacent to this is a big plot of land which various people have looked at for building housing. And we looked at what the future use of this area is, and what their objective to their general plan is really to set up another area in this neighborhood that will attract more commercial, that will be more gathering spaces, that will be more pedestrian friendly, and create a new vibrant commercial district in the city. And I don't believe that this really does that. And I realize that this has been a vacant plot of land for a long time, and I appreciate the incredible amount of work that the group has put into this. And I realize it's a very difficult space. There's not a lot, that you can do with it. But I think we in the city have often made exceptions, and this would require an exception because of the size of the building, just to allow some kind of development. And then later on, we look back and say, well, maybe we should have not have made those exceptions. And we have to sort of think in terms of long-term planning. And it's hard when we don't have all the elements on the table, but that is what I feel that we should be doing as a city, and looking at what we want the area to be long-term. And I don't believe that this actually fits into what we would find the future use of this area. So I would have to defer to our planning to understand exactly how these findings would come back to us, and perhaps the staff could answer unless there's any other questions on this. Can I ask Chris Hadwin to speak to that?
Sure. So what I'm hearing the primary concern around is the drive-through, and so that is the conditional use permit, which is associated with the project, and there are a series of findings associated with that. I think one of the primary findings is, bear with me one second, that the use is necessary or desirable for the development of the community. This is finding B, and it's in the resolution. And what I'm hearing is potential that the council may not make that finding. So if that were the case, I think the second option in your staff report was that we would go back and we would revise the resolution, making the findings as directed by council, and we would bring that back to a future meeting.
Okay, and just to be clarified, I did speak with a resident from the Racket Club West area who expressed that they think it was a lot better, and their desire was to have, they thought that maybe this would help attract other businesses, and I don't see how that really happens when you're having a drive-through. It's not like you're building a restaurant where somebody wants to have a store next to it or something like that. So in terms of the future development of the area, I think this would be detrimental to that. So I don't know if there's any other, how council's directed. I have the feeling that there's not a favor to majority to move forward on it as this. There's three of us, and I see three nods not to. And so I think what we do need to is go back. What are the options at this point?
I think it'd be appropriate then to take option 2. Close the public hearing and adopt the draft. I'm sorry, option 3. Close the public hearing and direct staff to draft the appropriate resolution denying the project and bring that resolution back at the earliest opportunity.
Okay, well, that would be my direction. Do we have I am going to make a motion on that.
I'll second. Oh, sorry, it's already seconded.
Councilmember Halstich? And the motion passes 4-1. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 3A, which is an introduction of a second reading adoption of an ordinance amending 3.4220 and Chapter 5.55 of the Palm Springs Municipal Code regarding the taxation and regulation of cannabis in the city. First reading, introduction of an ordinance providing the cannabis dispensary permit applications, business permit applications will not be accepted, processed, or approved by the city between January 1st, 2024 and December 31st, 2027, and the adoption of a resolution reducing the cannabis business activity tax rate on retail to 5% and allocating a percentage of taxes collected to be used for certain purposes. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, council.
Sorry, prior to the staff report, I need to recuse and leave the room. So I have a potential conflict due to a source of income for my husband's business, and so I need to recuse on this item. Thank you. So sorry to interrupt the staff report.
Good evening, council. This item agenda presents the second reading of an ordinance amending section 3.4.
1 second, sorry to interrupt. Could you announce your name and position,
Yes,
title, please?
Veronica Goodhart, Director, Special Program Compliance. Okay. And section 5.555 of the Palm Springs Municipal Code. It also is the first reading of an ordinance for a 4-year moratorium for the acceptance and processing of cannabis dispensary permits and a resolution regarding cannabis dispensary tax. At the February 8th meeting, Ordinance 2093 was introduced for first reading. The ordinance was adopted with some minor revisions. The ordinance, as adopted, excludes state excise tax from the definition of gross receipts, includes a definition of cannabis accessories, provides that an application for renewal will be denied if the business is not operational, requires cannabis dispensaries and lounges to display educational materials for safe consumption of cannabis, and clarifies that appeals for extension of the cannabis permits will no longer be heard by council. The excluded was the 2% distribution tax and a cap on the number of dispensaries. The resolution provides a reduction of local retail tax from 10 to 5% of gross receipts and allocates 1% of local tax for the city's social equity program and for social good. It should be noted that at the February 8th meeting, there was a consensus to change the taxing of cannabis nurseries from the local retail tax to the local cultivation tax. However, upon further review, it was determined that Measure E, the cannabis tax ordinance adopted by voters in 2017, specifically states that nurseries are to be taxed on the same basis as retailers. Rather than cultivation. Council cannot change this method of taxation without voter approval, so we cannot proceed with that change.
Okay, is there any discussion or additional questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Not for staff, and thank you, Veronica, for the update. We learned about the nurseries not being able to be taxed as cultivators. And we can't, and we need to tax them as we would tax retail businesses.
Correct.
So I would like to suggest to council that we do something that is somewhat equivalent to the cultivation tax, but have nursery come in at a 1.5% tax on sales instead of requiring them to pay the 5% retail tax or tax that we've got for the retail dispensary. I'm curious to hear how council feels about, that the idea of a holiday for a period of time, whether it's a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever that might be. I don't see how we can go backwards. Is there a mechanism to go backwards, City Attorney, since consumers have paid into these retail businesses, how could we go backwards to credit an account?
It would be difficult, and it'd probably be easier just to have it going forward.
Yeah. So I think knowing that, and we've publicly have said that we were going to go back 30 days, that we at least have a 30-day holiday on collecting the 5%, and acknowledging that we've spent, or the whole year, our retail establishments have been collecting at 10%. I'd like to see us have, maybe a 3 or 4 month holiday, and I'm curious to see how council feels about that. In an effort to show our true support for small business in Palm Springs and really wanting to, help these businesses as best we can. We're the ones that encouraged these businesses to come to Palm Springs, and anything we can do to help support these businesses and let them survive and thrive is a good measure on our part.
From a pragmatic standpoint, just in terms of making it simpler, I can work with the idea of a holiday. What worries me is every time there has been any kind of tax holiday or tax reduction, 2 weeks, a month before it's supposed to end, we will have an enormous amount of public comment about how wonderful it is, and we need to sustain it for another 3 months, and then another 6 months, and then another 12 months. I'm not open to that. If what we are talking about is purely a administrative act to make this simpler for everyone to calculate, I am open to that.
Can I ask a question, Veronica? So this was the January tax was due today?
Correct, the last day of the month.
Okay, so this would not really have gone back to January 1st because they would have paid that at the 10%?
Yes.
So February, they can pay at the 5%, but now they've still overpaid 1 month. Not overpaid, they've paid 1 month at the older rate of 10%, not what we were hoping to be the 5%.
Correct.
Okay, so, to address that, I don't know what kind of a holiday, but that seems reasonable for a 1 month to even it out. We are cutting the tax in half on retail, and we're not putting the distribution tax on it, so we are supporting them, and I feel that, by having a moratorium on new permits, which has been probably the biggest challenge for operators, is to have this oversaturation of permits, that we are helping them in that way. That was the purpose of doing this, was because there is, now they'll be able to hopefully sustain their business, and a number of them have closed. So just to answer you, I would suggest a 1 month holiday, and then that goes back to January 1st. And we have then given it back to January then, basically. Is that, you were looking at more, or?
I could go with 60 days. I just think I think it's a great gesture to the struggling businesses, and if we can give 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, I think we should do what we can to a point that it's not going to harm the city, but it's going to encourage these businesses and give them a little shot in the arm. And if it means a 90-day holiday, and I agree with Councilmember Middleton, absolutely no extension beyond that 90-day holiday, no ifs, ands, or buts. I just think that's a good way for us to help this business sector.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Councilmember Garner, on the holiday?
I'm fine with that. I'm open to the time frame. I would like us to all be in agreement, though.
I might point out to the council, if the council is concerned with the issue of customers having paid the tax, then we're now at the end of February, and so we've got another month of customers potentially paying what's been identified as a tax to the retailers.
So
90 days.
So this would have to be, so they have now paid the customers have paid January, that's been paid to the city. They've paid
If the
February.
retailers are identifying it as a tax on their receipts, which it's probably fair to assume they are.
Okay, so February's already been collected now, and that will be paid to us in March. If this were to go into effect today, that 5%, would that cover February's that they're paying at the end of March? So they would keep that 5%? I'm not understand the
Well,
logistics.
the tax is paid by the consumer, so for the month of February, they've paid the 10%. And that's what's been collected by the retailers.
Okay, so the issue now, when we're talking about a holiday, that's not necessary, that gives the business an advantage because they're charging less to the customer. It's not like they're giving anything back to the business. Is that correct?
Correct.
So all we're really doing is saying like, okay, you have this increased advantage over neighboring cities or improving your business because you're charging less. And even though we're less now than all of our neighboring cities.
Correct. And we did run, and it was presented at the last meeting, sales reports from a sampling of our retailers from before the local cities reduced their taxes and after, and there wasn't a great decline in sales. They were consistent. They consistently stayed the same.
Okay, and just to ask for the city attorney, so if they've collected this 10% in February, can we can't say to the retailers, you can keep half of that.
So the tax for retailers is actually imposed on the business. Now, they may pass that along to the customers as a tax, but it's not like a transient occupancy tax, which is technically imposed by the city on the lodger and collected by the hotel. So you could give it back to the businesses. You'd have a situation then where customers have paid what they believed were taxes, but they really were being kept by the business. So it may seem a bit unfair to those customers.
Okay.
I don't think it presents a legal problem, but it could present some perception issues for customers.
So now with that in mind, council, February they have collected 10%. Presumably we should assume the customers are aware that they have paid this 10%. Are we now saying that the retailer just keeps half of that? And we have a holiday going forward, or they pay that full 10%, and we have a holiday going forward? Councilmember Middleton was there first. Sorry.
Since what we're trying to do is even things out as much as we can, if 2 months of taxes have been collected and paid, then 2 months of taxes should be given a holiday. And I think just keeping the timeframes even.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is for March and April, they do not have to collect this 10%. And they can't collect this 10%. They can't say we're being charged a tax unless it's already built in somehow.
The city would not collect the 10% tax, and the retailer should not be imposing that on customers because they are not being charged a tax.
Okay.
That works for me. Since this is going to take effect immediately, does this need to be a 4/5 vote?
This is just the tax issue is on a resolution, so that can take effect immediately. You can identify that the holiday starts March 1st.
So it starts tomorrow, and we have a way of, I'm sorry to get logistics. Do we have a way of letting everybody know?
Yes, we can send out I can come in tomorrow morning and get that email out to all of our retailers.
Okay.
So that's not an issue.
Okay, so we are so far have some consensus on this 60-day for March and April. The tax will be 0, and as of May 1st, it will go to the 5%.
Yeah.
Okay, we are agreeing on that. I have another question that came up, and we have clarified that credit card and debit fees are not taxable.
Correct.
Okay, so that's in there. There was another question that we had discussed last time, or some of us had. I did not include it in the closing summation, which was a limit on number of permits per single permit holder. And I had discussed that basically because now we're sort of limiting the overall number, and in order to create a level of, have good competition within the marketplace, not to have one person come in and swipe up a majority of the permits, but from other existing businesses, and the other ones can't actually open anymore. Is there consensus? I think we have, what is the most somebody has right now?
One has 3.
One has 3. So the proposal then is to limit it to 3, bless you.
Yeah.
A maximum of 3 per permit holder? Okay, I apologize. So last time I had discussed briefly the limit on number of permits per one permit holder, because we now are limiting the overall number. So in order not to have, a monopoly or oligopoly where somebody comes in and buys all the other permits, that we would limit it. There's one person who has 3. Is there anyone who has 2?
2, no.
Okay, so they all have 1 except for one person has 3. So the question is, do we limit it to 2 or 3 per permit holder?
I'd like to see us limit it to 2 with that one exception that already has gone through the process.
Do we have to decide this at this point, since we're not going to be issuing any new permits?
Well, the point is that they can buy other people's. And so what the issue is that if we're now limited to how many, we have 30 something, and as one person starts buying up all the other ones, we could have X number of players who cannot get a new one because there's another one, and the other one has now bought up 25 of them.
I support a limit then, and I'll work with the consensus of council. Just like with vacation rentals, I thought 1 was a really good number.
Yeah, I think probably fair is probably 2. We have one person with 3, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in acquiring more at this point. That may change with the moratorium, but that would create a, help support also the locally owned small ones that have a single business. Mayor Pro Tem.
And I think having a per business cap is good, but I don't see how we can penalize our current business owners if we have one owner who has 3 already, and we're going to tell our other business owners that they're going to be restricted to only having 2. I think just out of fairness that we should say that everybody who's here today, the maximum number that they could have is 3. Are we going to have businesses all go out and get 3? I can't imagine it, but there's probably going to be a few that would try to do that if they could. But why would we be in a position to penalize them if they're running successful business? We want to encourage that with them. We're not letting new permits come in, so it's not like we're saying we're gonna restrict. We're going to bring in a whole new group of people coming in. That just isn't going to happen. So I would say 3. Since we currently have 3, that would be the max.
Yeah, and thinking about this, I mean, I agree that I wish we only had 2, but now that somebody has had 3, it sort of puts other people at a disadvantage. And this person who has 3 has others.
They haven't opened their 3rd yet. So they submitted an application. It's gone through all the entitlements. They've had some issues. So it's been approved, but they haven't been able to open. So it's been sitting in, I think they're working with planning and building on different permits. It's been sitting there for close to a year. So.
But from my understanding, Mayor, is that that applicant has gone through all of our processes, and we're not at a position where we could stop that.
Correct.
Yeah. So we have to assume that there's 3 because we don't have a mechanism to say they can't open a 3rd.
Yes. I would prefer we didn't have this, but I feel like we're giving an advantage to one person. So I say we leave it at 3 maximum. Just a summation, credit card and debit fees are not taxable. We are doing the February thing. The February tax will be paid at 10%. March and April will be 0%, and then we'll go to 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Nursery at 1.5, tax retail.
How do we do that? I don't.
Well, we can't charge them, we can't tax them at what we had talked about at our last meeting as a, what's the name?
Cultivator.
Cultivator, thank you, Veronica. As a cultivator, but we can get the equivalent of those funds through a 1.5%.
They're considered a retailer.
They are, because they're selling the plants at retail. They would benefit from the reduction in the retail tax. So by us reducing the retail tax, that's going to impact them. That's going to cut their current obligation in half.
I have a question for the city attorney. If they're considered a retailer, can we say to one retailer, you get 1.5% and everyone else gets 5%?
I think the city council can distinguish between classifications of retailers, yes, of businesses essentially.
Because they're a nursery, and we were going to distinguish them as a cultivator, tax them with a cultivator rate. Now all we're saying is they're going to be at a retail rate, we're going to tax them at the 1.5%. Nursery.
Councilmember Gardner?
Veronica, do you have any thoughts on this? I guess I just don't understand quite exactly how this differs. Is this giving an unfair benefit or not? Because I just don't know exactly how the retail portion of the nursery business works.
They currently sell their clones, so they're selling their clones at a dollar amount, and that's what's been taxed. It's been taxed at the 10%. A cultivator is by the square footage, so they take the total amount of square footage times 5, divide it by 12. They pay that same amount every month. The only difference I would see is that when you're cultivating, they're producing a product, and then they're selling their product, and it could vary, every month. By a retailer, they're retailing the sales of these clones. That could vary every month. So it's not exactly the same as cultivation, but I have no recommendation. That's a council decision to be made. My only request is that if we do provide a tax break to the nurseries, that it's only applicable to those who have good standings like our retailers. So it wouldn't be applicable to anyone with delinquent tax.
Yeah, just to clarify, all of these tax breaks we had said last time were for people who were current. So, and just to clarify, if we did this, it would be somebody who only sells plants to other businesses. Is that correct?
Correct, not to the public, because you can sell clones at dispensaries. You can buy them.
So they cannot. This would only apply to someone who is only selling to other retailers basically a wholesaler.
Yes.
Okay, and they can't they can't have a combined retail, cannabis, and nursery business.
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Most of it's because of zoning reasons. I haven't seen it.
And you should not be in the position of making the council decisions. We're just asking you for information because you're the most knowledgeable on this.
But I think if that did exist, they would be taxed differently if they had a retail sales establishment combined with a nursery. They would be having to pay a retail dispensary tax and the cultivation tax, or what we're talking about today, a nursery tax in place of the cultivation tax.
Right. So do we have consensus that we want a nursery who is selling wholesale, who's selling their wholesale to be taxed at 1.5%? Okay.
And for clarification, that tax reduction is only available to those nurseries that are not delinquent in their taxes.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other tax holiday that we talked about, the 2-month tax holiday, is also only available to people who are not delinquent. Otherwise, they go to the 5%.
We were using the good standing language that I think we got clarified what good standing meant at our last meeting, but it meant to encompass all of these things, that they're paid in full, they're up to date, they're not in the rears, and they're operating like good operators should operate. Is that what good standing means?
Is good standing enough of a legal definition?
We've defined it in the resolution as being current on all of their cannabis taxes and any penalties or interest that have accrued to that.
Okay. So it's the good standing. So with that, I am going to. Do you have anything else?
Well, we didn't touch on, Veronica clarified the credit card fees and debit card fees. And is that, Earlier today, I saw language from Chris, or maybe you, that was a paragraph of the, how, maybe it wasn't. The language that currently exists in the ordinance, you feel comfortable that, and Jeff, that we feel comfortable that the language there is going to allow us to not tax credit card fees and debit card fees?
So to clarify, that language about credit card fees was not included in the second reading of this ordinance because my recollection was staff answered that the city doesn't currently charge credit card fees, so it wasn't an issue. If the council wants to memorialize that in an ordinance so that in the future, if we start charging credit card fees, they're protected, we can do that, but it's not in this ordinance. If you want to add that language, my recommendation would be to add it to the moratorium ordinance, which is before you as the first reading tonight, and that way it can come back for a second reading at the next meeting.
Wasn't the reference to whether retailers are charging a credit card and debit card fee?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is whether we are treating that as revenue or whether it's fees. That's what the question is, whether the retailers, Veronica, am I correct? That their
If
issue
it would
is...
be included in their gross receipts, that was
Yes.
the question.
Yeah,
If
the
that-
question is whether retail, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the question was whether or not the service provider fees would be reported as gross receipts or not.
And if the council is concerned with that, again, my recommendation would be that we include that in the first reading, the moratorium ordinance, and we have language for that I can read to you.
Okay.
Okay. So now, the paragraph that I was reading earlier today wasn't about the fees, it was about the live scan results.
Correct.
So the language of the live scan results that we currently have allows us to allow an operator to have a probationary hire pending the results of those live scans coming back, right?
It's not worded that way in the current ordinance. It simply states 10 days upon hiring, they have to be cleared. That's the current language.
So how do we clarify that?
Again, if we didn't include it in the second reading of the ordinance because I wasn't sure if there was consensus, but if there is consensus by the council tonight, I would recommend you add it to the first reading of the moratorium ordinance so that, again, it'll come back for a second reading. It'll be included in our municipal code.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we had, council supported the probationary period, allowing the business hire based on the final results of the live scan, whether the live scan took 2 days or 2 weeks or however long. Okay, well, so we'll bring that back to the moratorium side.
Is there consensus? I'm
I'm-
sorry, I hate to do this by just
Yes.
silence.
No,
I know.
I would appreciate some clarification. I'm confused.
The question is whether right now we had to wait for people to get the results of the live scan before they could actually start employment. Is that correct?
Correct.
And now what the proposal was be that you hire them and then do the live scan, and if it comes back with an issue, they are terminated. That's what they're saying. And so they basically are working without the results of the live scan for a period of time, but it's not unlimited.
Right.
I mean,
So I recall at the last meeting that there had been significant delays in obtaining the live scan results, which was part of the reason that this was raised. But then we were told by staff that that has been significantly reduced to between 24 to 72 hours at the most.
Yes.
So that greatly changes my thinking about this, because if it's only going to take 24 to 72 hours, I mean, generally, I don't know, my experience, no one's asking me to work next day. It's usually takes a couple of days to process someone for just any paperwork. So waiting 24 hours to possibly 72 hours is a reasonable time frame.
I agree, and I was not, I did not like this because the idea that, I know that we don't have major problems, but if you did and somebody's working and this was actually a police issue, I think, because there was one person who was doing the live scans at night, and I believe Chief Mills last time, that's when he addressed it. I'm not sure, Lieutenant, if you're familiar with this or not.
Good evening.
Lieutenant Villegas.
This is perfect timing because I am the one who reviews all the live scans.
You're the one. You're the one.
So the return of the live scans, when it comes from the Department of Justice, so it goes to our technician who gets them and she emails them to me. That's typically between 24 to 72 hours. Sometimes there are delays up to a week. That's by the Department of Justice. I get them and I send them to Veronica's office on a weekly basis, and it varies from how many employees come. What I want you guys to kind of understand, the crimes that prevents an employee to work for a cannabis business, we're talking something egregious. I've maybe seen one in the last few years that prevents an employee from being hired. We're talking like murder, torture, things that you wouldn't see on a typical live scan. So that's the process. So I review them on a weekly basis, and the delays that sometimes come from DOJ is not significant. Most of them come back within 72 hours or so. Any questions?
No, but I think that's what we heard at the last meeting from the chief is the number of applicants that were flagged as very concerning was under 4 out of hundreds. Whether it was a 7-day delay as a result of Department of Justice and then a 72-hour delay or time period to churn them out at City Hall, there's still a delay that an employer is losing an opportunity to hire a good employee. And if we're just saying, however long that live scan takes, if it takes 2 days or it takes 14 days, we're giving that hiring authority to the business owner who's able to hire somebody on a probationary period in case the live scan comes back with a red flag. And this is allowing a business owner to capitalize on top quality employees or potential employees that walk in their door and are ready to work and are, want the job, instead of telling them, you've got to wait and however long that delay is going to be, as that top quality, well-functioning, high-functioning potential employee walks down the street to another business and gets hired immediately on the spot. So we don't want to have our small businesses disadvantaged because they can't hire somebody where the odds have shown us in the last 7 years, it's very unlikely somebody's going to come back with a red flag. And we did have consensus at our last meeting that we would give the probationary period.
Okay. Are we, Councilmember Middleton?
Yeah, again, I want to try to get us to consensus, but given the very small number of individuals that receive a recommendation that they cannot be hired, I don't think it's unreasonable to try to make the process work. What I would suggest perhaps as a compromise is that, and I'm just throwing this out off the top of my head, is that we give staff something on the order of 48, 72 hours in order to complete the process. If it's not been completed within that period of time, someone could go forward with a probationary hire for, say, up to 2 weeks.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds logical. Mike, what happens if it takes DOJ 72 hours to 96 hours to cycle it through to you?
We get a return from DOJ saying it's delayed because they're still in the reviewing process.
So the delays aren't just, the delay isn't as a result of City of Palm Springs. The delay is out of our hands. And if that delay exceeds, who knows how long it could be.
I think what Councilmember Middleton said is we would do 72 hours, and if it's delayed, then they could go up to 2 weeks. They could then be hired for up to 2 weeks until it comes back.
So what happens if it takes 3 weeks to come back? So I think we're putting a timeline on it, on a timeline that
Lieutenant
we
Villegas?
can't control.
Lieutenant Villegas, in your experience, what's the longest it takes?
Maybe a week. So the returns on these delays from Department of Justice, I've seen at the most about a week or so.
Okay, so it's not really an issue then. The issue really is somebody having to wait a week. And so what we're saying now with what Councilmember Middleton said is it's 72 hours. If it doesn't come back, they can start, but we need an answer within a week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, sorry.
I'd like to also add a couple other things that curveballs sometimes happen. Sometimes the employees don't give the correct mnemonic for our department, so that live scan doesn't even come back to us, but they've called Veronica's office or even me to find out the update, and then to come to find out, they didn't even properly fill out the application to get the live scan sent to the police department in Palm Springs. Now that doesn't happen often, but that's also a curveball that could possibly happen.
Okay, but that's the applicants.
Correct.
Okay, so that's not something, I mean, we need to accommodate. Councilmember Middleton, do you have another comment?
No, I think that
Okay.
I guess my only other comment is we can always amend these if we find out that this isn't working.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe we now have consensus. On the taxation ordinance, the second reading, we are going to do a holiday of 2 months for March and April, and then it will go to 5%. For operators who are doing wholesale nurseries, it goes to 1.5% that same time period. Both of those apply to operators who are in good standing as defined in the language.
And for clarification, that part is a resolution.
Okay, sorry. Reading this. So then regarding the moratorium, I'm reading them backwards. Regarding the moratorium, we agreed on that part, and we will have a limit of 3 per single operator. And also on the live scans, we will require 72-hour waiting. If we don't have results within that, they can hire someone for 2 weeks until we get the results.
And I have language for those 3 provisions if you'd like me to read that.
Yes, please.
Okay, so with regard to the cap on the number of permits, the language would read, an adult use cannabis permit shall not be issued or transferred to any person who is the owner of or has a financial interest in 2 dispensary cannabis business operating in the city or who has obtained 2 dispensary cannabis permits to operate in the city. With regard to the credit card fees, the language would read, credit card fees shall be excluded from the definition of gross receipts. And then with regard to the background check, in the event an employee background check takes more than 72 hours to receive a response from the city, employees may be hired on a probationary status for a period of no more than 14 days pending the final city approval of their background check.
Okay, we have consensus. We have a motion. The motion passes 4-0. Veronica, I want to thank you for all your work on this. I know it's not been an easy process, and you have really helped all of us and done great work. So thank you very, very much.
The city clerk should read the 2 ordinance titles.
An ordinance of the City of Palm Springs, amending Section 342020 and Chapter 5.55 of the Palm Springs Municipal Code regarding the taxation and the regulation of cannabis in the city. Ordinance of the City of Palm Springs, California, amended the Palm Springs Municipal Code to provide that cannabis dispensary business permit applications will not be accepted, processed, or approved by the city between January 1st, 2024 and December 31st, 2027.
Okay, thank you. The next item is public comment on non-agenda items. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the city council on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Although the city council values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. Our first speaker is Bill Hatch, followed by Max McCartney.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and staff. My name is Bill Hatch. I have two grandsons, excuse me. I have two grandsons who live in Palm Springs and are going to be denied the chance to play baseball this year due to some argument between the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Palm Springs Youth League baseball program. I have some questions for the council. I understand you can't answer them now, but I hope some of them at least might stimulate your curiosity or stick in your conscience. 1, why can't Palm Springs manage to have a viable baseball program for kids like they do in Palm Desert, Desert Hot Springs, Indio, La Quinta, Coachella, Thermal, and usually in Cathedral City? Not to mention Tri-Valley Little League in Yucca Valley. 2, is Palm Springs too poor to have a youth baseball program? 3, why has youth baseball stopped this year when in the past years there has been a viable program? 4, why would the city want to eliminate a program that brings out so many multi-generational families to the parks who enjoy themselves so much watching their kids play baseball? 5, how many of you on the dais have ever gone to a youth league baseball game with the families of the players? 6, do other cities in Coachella Valley charge youth baseball programs fees for fields, or is Palm Springs the only city so poor that it needs to charge this fee? 7, does the City Parks and Recreation Department wish to sideline youth baseball in favor of adult leagues? 8, if there is room for a vibrant gay adult baseball league, shouldn't there be room for youth baseball as well? 9, why has the city recently locked bathrooms in the parks? 10, the Parks Recreation Department director states, we aspire to unify our youth and youth at heart communities with
Mr.
open
Hatch.
arms and open hearts.
Mr. Hatch, your
We would
time is
really
up.
like to have an adult in the room to get this program going. Is that my 2 minutes?
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Max McCartney, followed by Mo El Abdallah.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. I wish I could say it's a pleasure to see you all again. Unfortunately, it's not. Honestly, I don't know what more any of us can say to get our point across. There is no shortage of information or evidence of a genocide being committed in Gaza. It's all out there, literally right at your fingertips if you cared to see it. At this point, I'm pretty sure everyone in this room knows what's happening, and you as City Council are making the choice to be complicit. For those of you with children or nephews or nieces or whatever it may be, think about the legacy you're leaving for those future generations. When they decide to do family research and come to find the names of their ancestors attached to such an unequal resolution set on October 12th. I feel sadness for those future generations. I have a good friend who's of German descent who can relate to this scenario. He went to Germany just a few years ago, only to find out his grandfather was a doctor in Hitler's army. His uncles and aunts still don't talk about it because they feel such shame from it. The only difference is that his grandfather was forced into it by the Secret Service and suffered tremendously from PTSD after the fact, whereas the City Council is making the choice to continue to stand behind and support a state that commits such heinous atrocities. Please do the right thing and amend the phrasing of the emergency resolution passed on October 12th and pass a new resolution calling for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mo El Abdallah, followed by Jesse Niemeyer Romero.
Hello again, City Council. What a privilege it is to be able to make official city statements about international affairs Statements supporting a genocidal state that has a history of committing war crimes since the birth of its existence. And then to be able to go home at the end of the day, unplug, and completely detach and go back to business as usual. I wish I knew what that luxury felt like. In the summer of 2006, I went to Lebanon with my family to visit relatives, just as we've done every couple years ever since I was a child. Only this time, a war broke out the day before we were meant to travel back to the US. We happened to be visiting my uncle in the south of Lebanon that day, and can you guess what Israel did? They bombed all the roads and bridges leaving the south, so we had no way of escaping. They bombed a power plant, so we had no electricity, no Wi-Fi, no phone service. They also bombed the runway to the airport in Beirut. Is any of this collective punishment starting to sound familiar yet? I only have 2 minutes, so I won't be able to get into the horrors we experienced trying to escape. When we finally did manage to leave the country via ship to Cyprus, there was tons of international media upon our arrival because guess what? We were the first ship of American citizens to be evacuated, even though the embassies of other countries had managed to evacuate their citizens many days before. Americans were the last ones. Social media wasn't what it was today, so at the time, our friends and relatives back in the US hadn't heard from us in over a week. They found out we were still alive when they saw me getting interviewed on CNN. Needless to say, I was never the same after that summer. So I plead with you, when you go back home this evening, think about what it means to so blindly support a state whose government is slaughtering innocent civilians with our tax dollars as we speak and systemically starving over 2 million people. Please consider amending the phrasing of the emergency resolution passed on October 12th or pass a new resolution calling for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jesse Niemeyer Romero.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. This is the 5th time that I and others have come here to speak and reflect on the resolution that you passed on October 12th and urge you to either reconsider the words of the resolution or pass another that calls for a ceasefire. Additionally, I and others continue to be concerned that this City Council, a local government body, is passing resolutions on international issues. In an earlier statement made to this council, I mentioned that the City of San Jose has made it council policy to ban their council members from taking positions on foreign matters. I have with me today copies of that council policy for your perusal. The policy was created in 1979, last revised in 2016, and requires that city officials only take actions on issues that most directly impact and affect the City of San Jose. This is the policy that city officials pointed to when there were calls made for the council to take a position on the conflict in the days following October 7th, and the most pertinent lines are located on page 2. I urge this council to consider passing a similar policy, a bylaw, or a resolution that disallows the council from making comment on issues that are far beyond their reach. Let a local council that is funded with local taxes and made up of local community members voted into office through local elections be concerned with local matters, not international ones. Before I take my seat again, I want to extend my appreciation to 4 of you who have spent time discussing this issue with me and another community member since January. However, I must express my extreme disappointment with the fact that the council member who represents me and the district in which I live has so far refused to schedule a time to meet with me. I find it interesting that my council member has had plenty of time to campaign for higher office, but not even 20 minutes to discuss this issue. If that is the way they treat a constituent now, I can only imagine how locals will feel if the council member wins their election, takes their seat in Sacramento, and then proceeds to ignore their constituents' concerns.
Thank you. The next speaker is Darrell Terrell.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. And Mr. City Manager, my name is Darrell Terrell. I'm not here speaking as a City of Moreno Valley Planning Commissioner, but myself. Our current line item budgeting system has been a staple of city governments for the past 100 years. As our city has evolved, so too the way we budget has to change to meet today's complex community needs. That's why I'm asking you, as I have asked in the past, to consider pilot testing priority-based budgeting next fiscal year. You will find adding it to your budget process would help you connect those line items to your strategic planning. It would help you evaluate and score programs based on desired outcomes and align budgets with the community priorities by reviewing services, levels, and efficiencies to reallocate and optimize resources. Also, it will provide you with the insight into how much city programs and services really cost and align resources with your community priorities. Moreover, it will make it easy for our community to understand how funds are allocated to the specific city programs and services and to see what those funds are accomplishing. So what I have before you is what the city of Riverside is currently doing right now. There's other cities throughout California and some counties are using priority-based budgeting. And I know the city manager has experience with this, and I think you can't do it now, but in the next budget cycle, there should be enough time to study it and see if it works for the city. So I want to enter this into the public record.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment present? I think we have one on Zoom.
Is David, is he online? No. He's not available online.
David's not available?
No further.
There's no other public comment? Okay.
No further comments.
The next item is City Council and City Manager request for upcoming agenda development and comments. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Taking a look at our two meetings for the month of March, you will see that we have scheduled a public hearing for our community development block grant annual action plan public hearing. We will be having a public hearing on the Block B residential project in the downtown area. We have a business item, which will be a fiscal year update financial audit report that we do every year. You'll see we have another business item, which is an update of the, it's a contract for an update to do an update of the College Park specific plan. We will be bringing back a business item on the use of automated license plate reader cameras by private entities. And we'll also be giving council the mid-year budget update at our next council meeting. You'll see in March 28th we have a few tentative items, but we're planning on shooting for is the convention center master plan that the staff have been working at the convention center in conjunction with the our tourism team. We'll be asking the Economic Development JPA to make a presentation on some of the actions and work plan for their in the coming year. And we have a TOT incentive agreement for the Caliente Tropics hotel property for your consideration. I do want to just two other very quick items. I know you've seen the news. We are excited to open our navigation center up this Monday, and we've been working very closely with it. Some groups, our resident advisory group, took a tour of the facility. I know several of the rest of you have seen the facility as well. We're going to be doing a community open house on March 14th that has been publicized, and we'll put that information out further. I do want to, we've been emphasizing this everywhere, the new facility is not a drop-in facility. It's not where we want anybody to just drop people off at. All intake begins at our access facility on El Cielo at the building known as the Boxing Club, and that will continue just as it always has. And our partners with Martha's Village will be doing the intake there and then helping people get services also at the early entry facility for sleeping in the evening. The other thing, the last thing I want to mention, our airport is
really, really busy right now. A lot of people are coming and going through our airport. A week ago Friday, we had a breach with TSA where an impatient person went right through security, and it caused disruption for that Friday evening where we had to move everybody in the airport, outside of the airport, and recheck them in. So you can imagine how difficult a process that was. And I only say that to indicate to the public, in about an hour and a half, our combined coordination between our airport security people, our police officers, our fire department, got people re-entered into the airport. So I was very proud of our staff for acting quickly on that and getting the facility back operational so quickly. So just a public bit of compliment to those three agencies working together. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I just clarify, the open house at the Navigation Center is March 12th, not?
March 12th.
No, okay, I thought you said 14th.
Yes, I'm sorry if I,
Okay.
yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem?
And another clarification, Scott, impatient person? What type of person breached security?
And I think it was an impatient individual.
Impatient person.
Somebody who did not want to wait online decided to run through it.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments for Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you. I just have a request because I know that we've voted to move forward on several issues that are not listed on our next two meetings, which is, I understand. But there was a time when we were kind of showing things that were being worked on by staff for the future, just so that those items didn't get lost. And so was wondering if we could see that in the future, because I know I have a list of things like the inclusionary zoning, the noise ordinance, and it's not about rushing anybody, but just so that we kind of see what's to come for the year.
Yeah, I brought that up. I would like to see that as well. Understanding things may end up falling off if they get covered elsewhere, we don't need them, but that way we have a list.
Right. I did talk to staff briefly about that earlier today. A couple people talked to me about it. I remember when I first got here, we had a big, long list of 1 million things. And at our, I know at our retreat, we took a whole bunch of those items off the table and we took that out. I do want to, I know some of you have given me some items, and I'd like to work with all of you to get those items on a list that we can get to you. It'll actually be helpful to me too, to be able to look at those and plan those. So I'll be following up with all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know last year we got good at making sure we had 3 votes to move forward on an item. So I think now we have a more condensed list of things that were discussed publicly.
Just to clarify, these aren't things that should be coming from individuals to add to the agenda. They should have been things that the majority has voted on. And if it's not on the list, then it can come up at a future meeting for a majority to vote on. Okay. Councilmember Middleton?
I don't have anything for agenda, but with regard to the comments made by the gentleman regarding the Youth Baseball League, I would like to see us get out a statement that is explaining what the situation is with regard to our parks and what we are doing and what we are attempting to do so that these youth leagues can continue, and to make it very clear that we are not prioritizing any age group ahead of the youth in our community. And so long as they're wearing Dodger hats, then they're really welcome in Palm Springs.
And I do, as one of my comments, wanted to mention Councilmember Gardner and I attended the kickoff to our Parks Master Plan workshop, and I would encourage community members to participate. They were also out at the Black History Fair, getting community input. I wanted to congratulate all the February events that we had in our city and what they do for the community, and not just and also the economic impact and diversity. We had the Black History Month, which had a lot of events, including the town fair and parade. We had Modernism Week. We had the International Bear Convergence. We had the Tour de Palm Springs, the McCormick Car Show, and the Palm Springs Jazz Festival. I also wanted to mention we had the opening of the Monarch Affordable Housing, the city's first affordable housing in 14 years. There are 60 units there. They are extremely attractive, and I believe they're already half full with a full list to go in. We also attended the opening of the Palm Springs SBDC, Small Business Development Center office, in conjunction with Caravanserai, who also is doing funds to help minority and businesses opening in our city, in part funded by our city. As you mentioned, the Navigation Center. Monday is also the kickoff for the Plaza Theater restoration. And for those in District 2, it is the quarterly Vista 2 District 2 community meeting at Vista Del Monte Elementary School. Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Two items. I don't know if at the beginning, Mayor, you mentioned our hats off to Chief and the Police Department for their hosting of the neighborhood community meetings that have been taking place all week. And our celebrity over there, Mike, is always in the center of attention at those meetings. So appreciate not only the Police Department hosting those meetings, but the community coming out and sharing their concerns and thoughts with the Police Department. So that is much appreciated. And just some guidance, Scott. You know I'm advocating for a new name for the Navigation Center. Is there formal steps that we can take to have a renaming of the Navigation Center?
Yeah, certainly and you know, if anybody wants to make a financial contribution to us for the naming of that facility, that
Not an individual's name, not an individual's name.
I don't know that it would take anything more than a formal vote of council or action by council.
I'm not aware of any adopted policy for the naming of city facilities.
So I would be in favor of bringing back at a meeting, council meeting, that we change the name Navigation Center to Casa del Sol Palm Springs, and instead of constantly having to use the navigation term, have something that's definitely much more home, welcoming, hope for the future for the residents and folks that will pass through those doors.
Requesting an agenda item
Yeah.
to do this?
Yeah, for the upcoming meeting.
I mean, I generally just, I don't really have an opinion. Let's put it that way.
Okay, we'll ask
Take
staff
that
to
as a
bring it
yes.
back, yeah, as an agenda.
I can support this, although I think things should be named for what they are, so that there's
And again, this is
clarity.
just discussing to bring it back.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I very support bringing it back. But
We can bring it
public should
back
know what kind
at
of
the point
facility
when,
it is.
when staff is ready. I mean, I don't think we have to demand that it be done next meeting.
Just so I understand, Mr. Mayor, are we bringing it when staff is ready?
Well, it has to come back as an agenda item to discuss the change
Right.
to the naming of it, and
You'd
so.
So is it, you'd like to have us agendize it at the next council meeting for discussion?
Whenever it is appropriate for staff to do it. I know you've got a lot of things on the next meeting, so I don't want to dictate how that, you determine that.
Okay.
Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, as requested, we are adjourning this meeting in memory of Nex Benedict and Andy Hollinger. Did you want to make any other comments? Okay. This meeting is now adjourned at 7:49 p.m.